Welcome to part 2 of the Ayleswell Inn build that is primarily being built for my Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
Now at this point in the build, I have to say I did not hit my timeline and my goal of accomplishing this for my first Dungeons & Dragons group. I was a little bummed out because I felt like this would really set the stage for how the campaign would be rolled out. I also really wanted to paint minifigures for each of my members as a surprise, as this would be their first campaign. And I had been pretty insistent upon asking them to describe their characters down to the clothing, hairstyle, even eye color.
And I got to the point of, did I want to work on the scenery or did I focus more on the miniatures and painting them for my friends that were playing? And I went more in the direction of the miniatures. Again, kind of what I'm basing this scenery around. In this video segment, we're going to primarily be looking at how to attach the boxes together and also how to score and create the exterior of the buildings. The two tools that I'll be using today are the DeWalt Orbital Sander as well as the Dremel 4000. In addition to both of these tools, I would strongly urge someone who is going to be working or undertaking these tasks to also have a vise that bolts into a solid surface. This allows you a lot more control, especially if you are new to these tools as I was. I'll be using this to take the finish off the cigar boxes that will allow an easier application of the wood stain. I really like using this orbital sander because the bottom, as you can see, there has some kind of a Velcro attachment, and you can also notice the holes that suck up the sawdust that will then place in the bag on the end. Another tool that I'll be using is the Dremel 4000. On the left side, you can see that there is a handle mentioned in a previous video in which I've cut all of these blanks from to practice and hopefully develop a more familiarity with this tool. I will primarily be using this tool to score lines on the sides of the cigar boxes to make it look like planking on the inn. So as you can see, on the left is the before and the right is the after. Pretty happy with the results. I will say, because it is a cigar box and not the highest quality of wood, there can be some chipping, so to be careful of that. There's also a couple times I snagged my fingers, so please be careful of that as well, as sometimes the orbital sander can skip a little bit out. But overall, very happy with the progress. And the next step will be marking out the lines that I will be scoring using the Dremel. I would suggest that if you are going to be using a vise that is bolted to your workspace, to also have scraps of wood that will be able to go between your project and also the vise, as if you strengthen or tighten the vise too much, it will leave scars and marks on the wood. Alright, so mapping out, I'm looking at the side of the inn. I'm looking at a minifigure to make sure that I am using the right size and the appropriate scale. I'm also using in the middle a locking measuring tape. And also on the right side, I'm using a very small measuring tape. It doesn't lock, however, it is pretty useful for minor measurements. As you can see, we're working with about 2¼ inches. It's also important to remember that when you are planning this out, whether it's doorways and windows, that you are also taking into account the size and height of the floor at the very bottom. I will be using the measuring tape to mark out the lines that will be scored on the side to show planks that would make up the wall of the inn. My first attempts were less than perfect, using the lines as the best way to guide. The Dremel can be a little tricky and it does have a tendency to skip. What I'll be doing next is I'll be inserting vertical lines to mimic the look of planks. Also keep in mind though, a building that looks too perfect is probably not going to look realistic either. That's the excuse I'm using at least. The wall is now scored. The grinder on the top, the sander on the right, the drum sander I use for the door, and I use the bit to again use the vertical lines on these planks. We're now going to move to the step of gluing the second floor to the first floor. So to do that, we're going to be gluing the second box, you can see the bottom here, to the first with wood glue. We're also though going to be using this painter's tape to go on the outside, but that is essentially what's going to protect it so that when we do eventually pull it away, the glue will not adhere to the sides. You can see the blue painter's tape has been applied. I've also applied glue to the bottom part of the second box. I would suggest taking a small piece of wood or a piece of cardboard and then spreading the glue out evenly. Okay, it's been flipped over and you can see it's been applied to the second base. I use some white lithium grease to go between the tape and the glued part of the box. As the wood glue dries, we're going to be considering what stains to apply. Now at the bottom of this, you can see for each color of the ebony, Sedona red, classic gray, it enhances the beauty of natural wood. Well, I believe the sides are of some type of wood. If we're expecting to see a lot of natural wood, we're probably not going to see that on the bottom slash the top, depending on what you're looking for in the building. So we have to keep that in mind. All right, I've decided on the classic gray wood finish to use. I'm using for application an undershirt, an old one, and a pair of scissors to cut up the strips. I've also used a weight of 10 pounds to help the first box adhere to the second one. The building's on top of the other, it's secured. However, thanks to the painter's tape and the lithium grease, it now slides off very easily to reveal the interior. And then again, when you want to slide off the top for the second part, very easy as well. So thanks to our carvings though, we're seeing some distinct lines, and we'll put in some windows eventually. The next step is putting on some stain. As you can see, we moved to the back porch to apply this stain. You cannot apply this indoors unless you have some kind of a vented space. I'm just doing it outdoors because, again, I don't want to stink up the house. It is important that you have chemical resistant gloves that will make sure the stain does not get into your hands. All right, to top us off, the stain's been stirred. I have my gloves on, and we're then going to proceed to dip one of the 2 rag cloths we have. We also have some backup paper towels in case things go a little sticky, and we're going to dip a little bit in and start smearing it on and seeing what it looks like. With this technique, you want to rub on and then keep the coats light. So as we kind of suspected, this isn't real wood on the top, so it's going to have a very interesting texture. We'll see how it looks. Now, I will say, with these gloves, it's a little difficult to be specific and detailed. Kind of be aware of that. And the instructions specify that you want to wipe in the direction of the grain of the wood. So we don't have one on the top. We're going to be trying our best to just keep in one direction. I've also put a little box beneath that will help us make sure it doesn't stick. Again, I would highly recommend you putting this on cardboard or something that, again, is not going to be missed if it gets messed up. And I'm really happy with this so far. It looks great. I am kind of globbing it on. See, when I go back and wipe it, it's looking pretty good. So we're going to stop the video. I'm going to apply stain everything, and then we will catch you all up. So as you can see, it has dried. It's been a few hours. It's actually been overnight. And it's not 100% consistent. That's okay. If I really wanted it to be more so, I would finish it up with a second coat. However, I'm pretty happy with this.
And also keep in mind that this was all made from scrap or recycled materials. For the next video, part 3 of the Ayleswell That Ayleswell Inn, we're going to be looking at different ways of roofing this inn. So there's a lot of different options whether we want to consider thatch or some kind of tile or even some kind of wood. So stay tuned for that. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to be caught up to date with everything that's going on in this channel. Thanks for watching.